The pick is in our full court press mock draft special. Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander, Tim Doyle, and Reed Forgrave playing the role of mock GMs. And Reed has the #1 overall pick for the New Orleans Pelicans. It's as easy as it gets, Reed.
I mean, we as the Pelicans thought really, really long and hard about this for all of about 3 seconds that it took Alvin Gentry to stop cussing and swearing and celebrating, and more than he celebrated anything in his NBA career. That's what he told me moments after they won the lottery back in May. This is the most obvious pick since Anthony Davis. And it's not just what he means in a basketball sense. Chris, you spoke about it earlier. The basketball possibilities of Zion Williamson are endless. We don't know what he's going to become, but we know that he has the chance to become something truly, truly special. Beyond that, his endorsement possibilities, the fact that he makes the New Orleans Pelicans a relevant NBA franchise. And this is a franchise you can't overstate the amount of trouble this franchise was in. They were bottom 5 in the NBA in attendance this past year, and that was with Anthony Davis, at least for part of the season. Now Anthony Davis on the way out, and then their ownership changing, GM changing. This is a franchise that was utterly in flux. The best comparison that I can make here for this pick of Zion Williamson is a comparison that is to a completely different sport, and it's when the Pittsburgh Penguins, a franchise that was in that there was a possibility that they could move, Sidney Crosby comes in and saves that franchise. We don't know if the New Orleans Pelicans would have been around 5 years from now, if they would have been in Seattle, if it weren't for Zion Williamson. Now it feels like this franchise is set for the future.
And Reed, you got another pick coming up for the Pelicans at #4, but our #2 pick is in. The Memphis Grizzlies picking at #2. Tim Doyle is our mock GM, and Tim, you were going with Ja Morant out of Murray State. You saw him up close and personal many times in college.
Yeah, I saw him his freshman year and his sophomore year, and what a development it was. Now, the big question mark is, well, he doesn't really shoot it that well. Still shot 36% from 3, and ask Florida State, he buried 5 of his first 5 3-pointers in that second-round game against the Seminoles. What makes him so different, guys, his basketball IQ is off the charts. Westbrook, Derrick Rose-like athleticism, but makes other guys better on the floor. I think Memphis is going to end up winning this entire draft. Yes, at 1, you have to take Zion. That's a no-brainer. But Ja Morant's going to end up being the best pro of this entire draft, an MVP-like player.
And Memphis is going to also have the #23 overall pick, according to reports coming over from the Utah Jazz in the Mike Conley trade. The Knicks pick is in at #3. Gary Parrish is making that pick. Gary, you got RJ Barrett, 1, 2, 3. I think we kind of know how this is going to go down.
Yeah, basically every analyst since the lottery was set has acknowledged that this is a 3-player draft, and it's probably going to go Zion Williamson to New Orleans, Ja Morant to Memphis, and then RJ Barrett to New York. And so I'm not going to be moved by reports within the past 48 hours that suggest that the Knicks are strongly considering taking Darius Garland. I know they met with him this morning, and I know that he's a reasonable option there. But RJ Barrett, this time a year ago, was considered the prize of this NBA draft, had been for years considered the best player his age in the entire world. And it's not like he went to Duke and underachieved. He was a first-team All-American for a team that earned the #1 seed in the NCAA tournament. He did all this while scoring more points than any freshman in ACC history. And so I can't promise you he's going to be a superstar, but I can promise you that he was great at Duke. He just wasn't as great as Zion Williamson. If Zion and Ja Morant are off the board, I think you take RJ Barrett, slide him into his lineup, and you let him score right from the jump. I believe he'll be a legitimate Rookie of the Year candidate because he's going to pick up big points, I think, every year of his career, barring injuries.
And now as we hit the #4 overall pick, this is when things get interesting. And Reed Forgrave and the Pelicans have the #4 overall pick. And it is Darius Garland out of Vanderbilt. We only saw him in 5 games. What do you know about him, Reed?
Look, this is where things get interesting. But for the Pelicans, to me, if they keep this pick, and there have been plenty of rumors over the past week that they're looking to shop this pick, but if they keep this pick, Darius Garland seems like a slam dunk. Look, are there concerns about him? Sure. Injury concerns are there. I've talked to people close to him, say he's 100%. Of course they're going to say he's 100% a couple days before the draft. You look at his body, he's slim. He might get overwhelmed on defense, but it's on the offensive end. where this guy is an absolute stud. He has an incredible handle. He has the ball in a string. He's super quick, and he is an elite three-point shooter. Yeah, he turns the ball over some. Yeah, he needs to add strength. But the idea of pairing him with Alonzo Ball and a Drew Holiday and a three-man backcourt, and then of pairing him in the pick and roll with Zion Williamson, I mean, I am not even a Pelicans fan, and I am so excited to see the possibilities here. I do think the ceiling for him, it may not be a Steph Curry because no one's going to be a Steph Curry, but I do think the ceiling for him could look a lot like Kemba Walker.
Our pick is in at number 5. The Cleveland Cavaliers selecting DeAndre Hunter out of Virginia in our last mock draft, and Matt Norlander saving maybe the best for last, finally getting in on the action. Matt, what do you think of this pick?
If Hunter falls to 5, it's a great coup for Cleveland here because Hunter might be the best defender in the draft. You look at what he did on the biggest of stages in the national title game, lifting Virginia to its first national championship in history, was so valuable to that team on both ends, has great touch, great length, great NBA body. To me, on my big board, he's the clear number 4. I like him a lot more than Garland overall. I think that Cleveland could really benefit from having a player of Hunter's caliber. Great three-point shooter, yes. Great at the college level, well above 40%. And I think that he's going to be an impact player immediately. It would not surprise me if we looked up a year from now and saw that Hunter, like Malcolm Brogdon, also a Virginia player, albeit one who went in the second round, wound up having a rookie year that was so impressive to the point that he was, in the Rookie of the Year conversation. And I say that full well knowing who's going 1, 2, and 3 in this draft.
So DeAndre Hunter goes 5 to the Cleveland Cavaliers, coming off that national championship for Virginia at number 6. It's a player he beat in the national title game, the Phoenix Suns. And their mock GM Reed Forgrave taking Jarrett Culver out of Texas Tech. Reed?
Look, when we talk about Jarrett Culver and his ceiling, one of the first things that you really have to look at is his height. He's listed all over the place at 6'6", but all you got to do is Google Jarrett Culver height, and there's all these conspiracy theorists that he's actually 6'8", that he's grown since his freshman season. I spoke to Jarrett Culver during the NCAA tournament about this. He thinks he's still growing. If Jarrett Culver becomes 6'10", if he's one of those guys who grows late, this could be an absolute steal for the Suns. As he stands right now, this is a guy who, when you talk to scouts about him, they use phrases like high IQ, that he knows how to play, that he's a high-character young man who comes from a great family. He's a guy who can dribble, pass, and shoot. Yeah, there are concerns about his three-point shooting, and until he fixes that, that's going to probably be the biggest concern about him. But look, when I look at this guy, is he going to be a star? No, I don't think he's going to be a star unless he shoots up to 6'10". But I do see him as a sort of a jack of all trades, master of none type of player. The ceiling for him, I think, looks a lot like Chris Middleton if Jarrett Culver can go on that same sort of developmental curve.
Suns were disappointed. Those lottery balls did not land in their direction, much like the Chicago Bulls, who are picking number 7 in this year's draft. And Tim Doyle is playing the role of the GM there. Tim, living in Chicago, knows the Bulls very well, going with Coby White out of North Carolina.
Yeah, and 7 has been a common theme here in Chicago with Lauri Markkanen as well as Wendell Carter. But there's a foundation here of some pretty good players. They just are not on the court healthy at the same time. Chris Dunn is still in town, but Coby White's stock has shot up maybe as much as anybody in college basketball last year. Guys, he was not supposed to be a one-and-done type guy, but had some explosive games. He's got exceptional size at 6'5", and now you pair him in the backcourt with a Levine, a Markkanen, a Wendell Carter. I think the Bulls have a shot making the playoffs in a very average East. Big thing for them is health, and a big thing for Coby White is got to keep learning how to play the position. Definitely a score-first point guard. Needs to do a better job of getting other guys involved, but that hair... Come on, guys. With hair like mine, I had to take hair like his, right?
No longer the best hair in Chicago, if that happens to be the case. And the Bulls do take Coby White with that 7th pick in tomorrow's draft. Let's recap 1 through 7 here as we are just getting started in our mock draft 3.0. Zion, Ja, RJ go 1, 2, 3 as expected. Darius Garland paired with Zion Williamson for the New Orleans Pelicans. DeAndre Hunter 5 to the Cavs. Jarrett Culver 6 to the Suns. And Coby White at number 7 to the Bulls. Coming up, we got a team with a couple picks rounding out the top 10. The Atlanta Hawks, the 8th and 10th picks. Which players do they add to go with Trae Young? And does Cam Reddish slide out of the top 10?
Our I'm Raja Bell, and this is my draft evaluation of Nassir Little. Nassir Little has elite physical profile for a modern combo forward.
Nassir Little, hello!
He plays with such motor and aggressiveness that you'll be able to put him in and he'll really impact games defensively at the NBA level next year. His offensive skill set needs a lot of work. It needs a lot of polish. He relies heavily on hustle plays and opportunistic buckets right now. He's got to become a better shooter and a better playmaker off the bounce. But because of his size, his strength, and his athleticism and the motor that he plays with, he'll have a chance to come in and be able to impact games on the NBA level and transition right away.
Thank you to Raja Bell for that draft comp and comparison there. 6'6" with a 7'1" wingspan. Nas Little still on the board as we get ready for pick number 8 in our NBA draft special, our mock 3.0. Gary Parrish, Tim Doyle, Reed Forgrave, and Matt Norlander here with me. Gary Parrish has the number 8 pick. The Atlanta Hawks have 2 of the next 3 picks, and Gary is indeed going with Nas Little out of North Carolina. Gary?
This is a guy coming out of high school that was a projected top 5 pick, and I know he wasn't great or even very good at North Carolina, but at this point, with him being so young, still super athletic, incredible upside, I'm going to chalk it up to just a bad roster fit. He was playing behind 2 very good upperclassmen, and he just never got comfortable, never got any rhythm all season. He showed flashes, but was never consistently good. But all of the stuff that people liked about him, or at least most of the stuff people liked about him, coming out of high school is still there. He played in the McDonald's All-American game. With all the guys who are going to go in the top of this draft, he was the MVP. He played in the Jordan Brand Classic game. With all the guys who are going to go at the top of this draft, he was the MVP. And so I do think the first 7 players we have going 1 through 7 are the 7 that are going to come off the board, and that's the 7 that should come off the board in whatever order. But after that, it opens up a little bit, and I'm happy to roll the dice on Nassir Little, who hopefully was just a bad fit at North Carolina, but is ready to play into his potential in the NBA.
Gary and the Hawks don't have much time, just 1 pick between them and their next pick. At number 9, the pick is in for the Washington Wizards. Matt Norlander mocking the GM. And it's Jaxson Hayes, the center out of Texas at 6'11", 220.
It is Jaxson Hayes. There are 2 big men in this draft, in this first round, who have a lot of questions surrounding them. Bol Bol, who we'll get to eventually for all the wrong reasons, and Jaxson Hayes for all the right reasons. I spoke to a scout a couple months ago, and there is a belief among NBA evaluators that at his ceiling, Jaxson Hayes, 5 years from now, could easily turn out to be a top 5 player from this draft. The thing is, he doesn't have a ton of experience. I mean, he played less than 10 minutes per game as a junior in high school, but the size, athleticism, he shot 73% from the field last season at Texas. There's a lot of potential and promise here, but he's obviously very raw. Can be a good rim protector, a great rim runner. In the top 10, when there's a lot of question marks, Jaxson Hayes has a lot of upside and potential. And if I'm Washington at number 9, when I'm going through a roster rebuild anyway, why not take a chance? Because he could turn out to be a huge win and could prove to be drafted 3, 4, 5 spots below where he actually ends up being picked.
And rounding out the top 10 now, the Atlanta Hawks picking again after taking Nas Little, number 8. Gary Parrish goes outside of the United States, and it's, correct me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Sekou Doumbouya from France.
It's close enough from me. Yeah, first international prospect, and I think Atlanta is quite clearly just in the get as many interesting young prospects on your roster as possible, understanding that, given this is the NBA, they're not all going to work out. But you can afford to roll the dice on some guys who have tremendous upside. That's what I did with Nassir Little with the 8th pick, and it's what I would do here with Doumbouya. He has been playing professionally in France. He's still very, very young, but runs well. 2-way player, shoots the 3, probably more advanced on the defensive end of the court than the offensive end of the court at this point, but there are plenty of people who believe he can be a very good, if not possibly great, modern-day 2-way forward. And if you can get that guy on your roster to go with Trae Young and, under these circumstances, Nassir Little, you really got some nice building blocks to build around.
And now we have finished the top 10. We move to number 11. The Minnesota Timberwolves pick is in from Reed Forgrave, and it is Cam Reddish out of Duke. This is quite the fall, Reed, for a guy that could have been top 3 or 4 had you been allowed to come out of high school to the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, Gary was just talking about high potential players, and I think you can make an argument that Cam Reddish might have as potential as anyone in this draft not named Zion Williamson. Look, there's clear risk and reward with Cam Reddish. But at number 11, when you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, you roll the dice on that. The questions about him have to do with heart and work ethic and consistency. People say, what I had one scout say to me is like, he's a sometimes player. I'm just not sure if he's an all-the-time player. But when you look at those sometimes, you see a guy that is 6'9", an NBA body, 7'2" wingspan. He can shoot it. He's a guy who was a point guard up until coming into college, was put in a not great situation at Duke where he was the clear number 3. I would wonder if playing off the ball at Duke, after playing his entire life on the ball, that could end up serving him well. The ceiling for him, I think, could look a lot like Paul George if he's able to dig deep. But of course, the floor for him, and this, as someone who lives in Minnesota, this hits me really hard. The floor for him could be an Andrew Wiggins type player, a guy who has so much potential but can never quite live up to it.
At this point, Wiggins has not. We'll see what happens with Cam Reddish and where he ends up going tomorrow night, but he falls to number 11 in our mock draft special. At number 12, the Hornets out of Charlotte are taking Romeo Langford. Tim Doyle, the mock GM here. Tim, you live in Big Ten country. You're going with a Big Ten kid out of Indiana.
Yeah, he had a disappointing year in his only year down in Bloomington, but a lot of uncertainty if Kemba Walker is going to stay in that Hornets uniform. And here's a guy who could flat out get buckets. I think that he's going to be an elite scorer one day at the NBA level. And Malik Monk's only 6'3", and so far has been disappointing in his couple of years in the NBA. Langford is at 6'6". I'm just going to chalk up to that being a bad year. And let's be honest, it's Jordan down there at the Hornets. There's no more North Carolina players to select. If there was a North Carolina player, he would have taken him by now. Maybe he takes Luke May at this spot. I think Langford's a guy that can certainly score off the bench in year number 1. But maybe they take a flyer and take a chance with a guy who can clearly score at the NBA level.
You got a bunch of Kentucky guys that are still out there on the board, and we do have one of them now off the board at number 13, the Miami Heat, drafted by Gary Parrish, taking P.J. Washington out of Kentucky. Gary?
You know, as I've said many times, every time a talented freshman who is perhaps good enough to enter the NBA draft, even if he's not quite ready to be in the NBA, every time that guy returns to school, he says, I'm coming back to school to, go to a Final Four, win a national championship. But somewhere in there, it's always to improve my draft stock, whether it's said or if it goes unsaid. Truth is, most guys do not improve their draft stock with another year of college. They are what they are. P.J. Washington's the exception, though. He shot terribly, unlimited attempts, but terribly from three-point range as a freshman. Shot terrifically on drastically more attempts as a sophomore and showed that he can be a space-the-floor forward in the NBA who can also do work around the rim if you need him to. Not everybody who was projected borderline first-round pick launches himself into the lottery. I think P.J. Washington probably did.
Boston Celtics have our last lottery pick here at number 14, and Matt Norlander is drafting for the Celtics. It's Brandon Clarke, who we got to know very well in the NCAA tournament a season ago with Gonzaga.
Yeah, and if I'm Boston, by the way, with 3 first-round picks, I'm almost certainly trading at least one of them. But if Brandon Clarke falls to your team, be it Boston or otherwise, you are going to be happy. In terms of in-game athleticism, I think Brandon Clarke is second only to Zion Williamson in this entire draft pool. He doesn't have great measurables. He's a freak athlete despite the fact he doesn't have this amazing wingspan. But he is such a good rebounder, shot blocker, help defender, mid-range shooter. You know, I talked to Mark Few, his college coach, this week. He said during Brandon Clarke's redshirt year when he transferred from San Jose State, where he was a complete unknown, to Gonzaga, he would guard Jonathan Williams III in practice. And JW3 was a pretty impressive college player. Brandon Clarke was so good on defense, he was blocking him essentially every time down the floor. And Mark Few said, this isn't realistic. There's no one in college basketball who can do what you're doing. So you're not even going to guard him anymore. Brandon Clarke, I think, is someone that you could see go as high as 8th or fall potentially as low as 20th. I think that would be a mistake. To me, he's a clear-cut lottery talent. If I'm Boston, he's available at 14. This is an easy pick, a great defensive injection to a roster that, as we well know, is going under some severe turmoil and changeover at the moment.
That is the last lottery pick in our very last mock draft special here on CBS Sports HQ, with the draft coming up tomorrow. Just recapping our top 14 so far. Zion, Ja, and RJ go 1, 2, 3 as expected. It was Darius Garland at number 4 to the New Orleans Pelicans. Nassir Little and Sekou Doumbouya to the Atlanta Hawks at 8 and 10, respectively. And then looking at 11, Cam Reddish, who has a lot of potential, but a low floor as well, according to Reed Forgrave, who compared him to potentially Andrew Wiggins, who has not quite panned out there for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And DeAndre Hunter, who came down with that last rebound and played a huge part in that championship for the Cavs, is already off the board. He went number 5 to the Cavs in our mock draft special. But there is another Virginia Cavalier who could go soon as we hit the second half of our mock draft special. Got Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander, Reed Forgrave, and Tim Doyle here with us on HQ. And the Pistons are on the clock at number 15. The pick is in from Reed Forgrave. It's Keldon Johnson out of Kentucky.
Ideally, there would have been a competent point guard available at this point in the draft, but this is a 3-point guard draft. So for the Pistons, they need another creator. They need a guy who can score. Keldon Johnson is a guy that has a high ceiling as far as a scorer goes. He's 6'6". He's got a 6'10" wingspan. He's explosive. He's a very good shooter. Shot 38% from 3 last year at 3.2 three-pointers per game. He has very high potential on both ends of the court.
And at number 16, the Orlando Magic are taking another Virginia Cavalier. It's Ty Jerome. Tim Doyle, you made this pick as mock GM of the Orlando Magic. Why are you so high on Ty?
Because he knows how to play. Do you know how you negate athleticism? By basketball IQ. Heck, look at the Magic's roster. You have so many great athletes there, but the point guard position, I love DJ Augustine, but checking his Wikipedia, he's 74 years old, okay? That's not the point guard of the future there. Ty Jerome plays with amazing pace. I think he can shoot it from deep. Yes, he's not the most athletic player in the world, and defensively he's going to struggle, but I think he can make guys better on the floor. There's some weapons down there in Orlando. This is an Orlando team that made the playoffs. I think finding someone to run the show, be a true point guard, I think Jerome's going to be that. The reality is the Magic aren't taking Jerome, but if I was the GM, Chris Hassel, I would take him. I think he's a perfect fit. They need somebody to run that team, and that's exactly what Jerome does. He runs a team.
Our producer, Joey, says that's his favorite pick so far in this draft. He's high on Ty Jerome as well. Gary, do you think he is going to be a point guard, or will he be a 2-guard at the next level?
That's the thing. I mean, we are in the era of positionless basketball. I just think he's going to be a guard in the NBA. And I love him just as much as anybody else you've heard talk about him. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's a 6'5" guard who can dribble, pass, shoot, just knows how to play. Think about in recent years what we've seen in the NBA and what we said about these players coming out of college. Fred VanVleet's a great example. Didn't measure the right way, maybe wasn't a great athlete, but man, just knows how to play, knows how to run your team, knows how to win. Now look at him, he's a world champion. Jalen Brunson last year, obviously great, national champion, national player of the year, didn't measure the right way, maybe not a great athlete, but man, just knows how to play. He'd be drafted much higher if we redid the 2018 NBA draft, which we did yesterday here on CBS Sports HQ. Ty Jerome, similar to those guys to me. Obviously, bigger. Obviously, probably going to be selected higher than either one of those guys was. But still, I bet you if in 2020 what we do in 2019, Ty Jerome will go higher than most people have him going right now.
And Gary is the mock GM for our very next pick at number 17, the Brooklyn Nets taking another Kentucky player, this time Tyler Herro. That is 3 Kentucky players in our last 5 picks, Gary.
You know, Tyler came into college with a reputation of being a, quote, shooter, and that might have been rooted in a lot of things, perhaps stereotypes, but he showed pretty quickly at UK that he's more than just a shooter. He can put the ball on the floor. Shot 90% from the free throw line, which suggests that he's really going to be a sensational, or at least has a chance to be, sensational shooter in the NBA. So whether it's P.J. Washington, Keldon Johnson, or Tyler Herro, all those guys are going to go in the first round in some order. And I might, on a certain day, like Tyler Herro as much as any of them. I think he's got a bright future. Why? He's got good size. He can really shoot it. In the modern NBA, if you've got good size and you can really shoot it, there's usually a job for you. Look around right now. The Bucks competing for a world championship next year. They need to add shooting. The Lakers trying to build around LeBron James and Anthony Davis. What do they need? They need to add shooting. Everybody needs to add shooting. So if you enter the draft as a shooter, that's going to be good for you right now.
And my apologies, I said that was the Brooklyn Nets pick. The Brooklyn Nets traded that pick to the Atlanta Hawks, so Atlanta with 3 of the top 17 picks so far in this draft. Reed, how do you think he fits next to Kevin Huerter, a shooter that they drafted in last year's class?
I mean, like Gary was saying, you can never have enough shooters in the NBA. And Tyler Herro, look, he is a shooter, but he is much, much more than a shooter. So I actually like the fit perfectly well. I think the Atlanta Hawks, we'll see if they keep all of these first-round picks. My guess is they probably don't. They're certainly trying to package those 8 and 10 picks in order to move up. But look, they have a great young core. And if you have Kevin Huerter, Tyler Herro, and Trae Young, man, that's immediately one of the best young shooting teams in the NBA.
All right, that's Reed Forgrave on Tyler Herro, who goes number 17 to the Atlanta Hawks in our mock draft special. At number 18, it is the Indiana Pacers, and there's going to be a lot of people overseas across the Pacific that are going to be interested in hearing this name. Rui Hachimura from Gonzaga. Gary Parrish, you take him 18th overall.
Yeah, he's a guy that really improved year over year, every year at Gonzaga. And I saw him early at the Maui Invitational last November. He played in a game against Zion Williamson, against RJ Barrett, against Cam Reddish. And I'm not going to tell you he was the best player on the floor, but he competed with those guys and actually got out of there with the win, made big plays on both ends of the court in the final minute of that Maui Invitational championship game. He's a modern-day power forward. He can step away from the basket, face you up, make a shot, and if you want to go small on him, he can punish people around the rim. I don't think he's going to be the top 10 pick that some people projected him to be early on, but still safely in the top 20 and probably a steal at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is an absolute steal at this point, I think. And look, when we were talking about Zion Williamson, I'm not comparing Rui Hachimura to Zion Williamson, but there's that endorsement potential, that intangible with Zion. That is a big part of why a team wants him on their team. For the Indiana Pacers, a small market team, getting a guy like Rui Hachimura is absolutely huge. Why is that? Because suddenly the Indiana Pacers become the team of Japan. This is the first Japanese-born first-round pick in NBA history. They have the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. Rui Hachimura will be playing for that Japanese team. So this pick, look, I think he's a really good player with a high motor and a high ceiling, but beyond that, he brings a team relevance. And the Indiana Pacers, I think that's one thing that when you're a small market team, you need in the NBA.
And there's a ton of Japanese media already in place getting ready for the draft and getting ready to hear Rui Hachimura's name. The next name being called in our mock draft special at number 19 is Nickeil Alexander-Walker, taken by the San Antonio Spurs. Matt Norlander, the mock GM for the Spurs.
Yeah, this is a great fit. Alexander Walker, 54% from two-point range, about 35-36% from three-point range. I think he'll get better. Can handle the ball with both hands, doesn't lean really to one side of the floor or the other. I think he'd make a great compliment for, say, a DeJounte Murray. I think that this is a good value. The kind of player who is not going to be a lottery pick, but if we look up 3-4 years from now, the right fit, the right kind of franchise, could easily see Alexander Walker, who carried a very nice reputation for himself coming out of high school, looking to be a top 10 player out of this draft overall. I don't even think he got to really utilize his full toolkit while playing for Buzz Williams at Virginia Tech. I think he's ready to break through to the next level. I think this is really good value and a fantastic fit from a position standpoint with the Spurs.
I don't mean to keep bringing up the Maui Invitational, but it was an amazing trip. When I was out there, there were a lot of NBA scouts there, obviously, because Zion was there, RJ was there, Cam was there, Rui was there. And when I would ask multiple guys, so who have you seen so far in practices or in early games? Who did you like? This is the player I heard most often that had improved from last season to this season. Showed the ability to play either guard position, showed the ability to knock down a shot, was a part of a winning culture playing for Buzz Williams at Virginia Tech. Absolutely. In my mock draft, I've got him going higher than this. If you can get him here, you snatch him up and you feel good about it.
I know why you keep bringing up the Maui Invitational. We had you on HQ. We saw where you were coming to us poolside. How could you not go back to that each and every day? Our pick is in at number 20 overall, the Boston Celtics, who might lose Al Horford, who's opted out of his contract, taking Cam Johnson out of North Carolina, small forward, 6'8", 205. Matt Norlander made the pick.
Yeah, when I wasn't at the Maui Invitational, I couldn't help but think about how good of a player Cam Johnson really is. In reality, he is the best shooter in this draft. He is regarded as such. He has made tremendous strides. You look at the way he plays, I think all the panelists here and analysts would agree, he is set up to thrive at the NBA level, even if he's never going to be a C+ or better defender. Shoots well, can create some of his own shot, has a good dribble, comes off screens well, 45% three-point shooter. Boston could really use someone like him to come in and be a part of the rotation. But again, let's remember the Celtics have 3 first-round picks. I think it's almost impossible that the Celtics will wind up using all 3 picks. I don't think they want to add 3 rookies to their roster. So Cameron Johnson falling this spot would be a nice little get here, but don't be surprised if they try to trade out of this spot or the next spot.
Have the number 22 pick coming up, and took Brandon Clarke out of Gonzaga at number 14. Tim, we just heard Matt Norlander say that Cam Johnson is 6'9" and is the best shooter in this class. How does he fall all the way to 20?
Well, I think that's all he is, right, is just a shooter. I'm not sure really he fits in with Boston, right? You have Jaylen Brown, you have Jason Tatum. So I think their roster is in complete havoc right now as far as what their identity is going to be going forward. But, yeah, he's got all the intangibles. He's going to be an NBA player. Like, when I see his game, I want him to play with a guy like LeBron. I want him to play with a guy like Zion Williamson, guys that are great, Giannis, like guys that demand a lot of attention, because he is going to be that knockdown shooter at the next level. Not sure if Boston can pass on him at this point. Just not really sure he fits in that roster.
We have finished the top 20 of our mock draft 3.0 special, recapping 15 through 20. A couple of the Kentucky guys, Keldon Johnson and Tyler Herro, along with P.J. Washington, who went number 13 to the Miami Heat. And we just got done with the Boston Celtics and Cameron Johnson. Boston also has the number 22 pick coming up. And as we finish up the first round in our mock draft special, the Golden State Warriors are coming up. They have pick number 28. What do they do as they make their first step into a new era?
Carson, what's up, man? My best advice for you is just enjoy the moment, too. You had a great college career. You did some amazing things.
Pulling up, shooting a long one, and hitting it is Carson Edwards.
Your name's up there with Steph Curry.
And a 3-ball.
Just enjoy it. Go in there, work hard. Don't worry about where you go to in the draft, first round, second round, as long as your names get called. And once you get to that team, just show them what you are. Show them what you're made of.
Drive to the basket and a layup for Carson Edwards.
Show them what you can provide for the team, and have that chip on your shoulder that you belong, and that'll take you a long way.
Finishing up with some late first rounders here on our NBA Mock Draft 3.0 special, and the Boston Celtics finishing up with their third of 3 first-round picks. Fiondu Kabengele out of Florida State going at 22. He didn't have a scholarship coming out of high school. He's the nephew of Dikembe Mutombo. Matt Norlander made that pick. Matt?
Yeah, I think that he has a lot of tremendous potential here. I think he might be unique in this respect. Can we remember a player that would have been a first-round NBA pick that did not start a game in college? Because that's Kabengele. He did not start. And by the way, apparently it was his choice this past season to come off the bench. And yet he's a first-round talent, multi-year player. Last thing guy I can remember is Marvin Williams at Carolina, who went number 2, but Kabengele's obviously not that kind of prospect. But really good handle. Some weird concerns about his knees because he preferred to wear braces around his knees, but the medicals have come back well from what I've heard. And can play the small ball 5, good athleticism, really good attitude. High value pick here. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go as high as 16 or 17. But yeah, if he's sliding to 22nd to the Celtics, I think he'd be a perfect fit for that franchise if they opt to keep the pick. A little bit of an unknown, but a great story there. One of a number of players who was lowly ranked coming out of high school, who nonetheless is going to be a first-round pick on Thursday night.
Reed, do you think he could be some kind of a future replacement for Al Horford, who looks like he's on the way out?
Absolutely. I love Kabengele. This is my best sleeper pick in this entire draft. Good job, Mr. Norlander. He's a big body, a hell of an athlete, and he can shoot the 3. Like, this is a modern-day big man. It is amazing to me that he didn't start in college. It's bizarre, but that just shows you the type of talent that Leonard Hamilton can recruit to Tallahassee.
Celtics have 3 picks in tomorrow's draft, and a couple of you have said that you don't believe the Celtics are going to make all 3 of those picks. They'll trade something, but no trades in our mock draft today. Brandon Clarke, Cameron Johnson, and Mfiondu Kabengele. Tim, what do you think about that trio?
I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right, with the roster that they have. They have tons of wing players, right? Their 2 best players are wing players. Jaylen Brown's a wing player, so is Jason Tatum. Like, the biggest problem with the Celtics is identity. What are they going to be? And they were clearly better without Kyrie Irving, so got to figure he's going to be gone. What's Al Horford going to do? I think the Celtics had all these riches, right? They were like, Danny Ainge was like hiding them away like a little munchkin guy. Like he was like, I have all these draft picks. And now it's like, well, now you have a roster of all these players that don't really fit. So I think the Celtics are a very intriguing team. What's the identity of this squad going to be? Because going into this past NBA season, guys, they're one of the favorites to win it all. And they had all these draft picks. Is it really going to pay off?
Well, we'll see tomorrow night what they decide to do. We have a few more picks to go, and we want to unveil the last 5 picks of the first round, including the Golden State Warriors, who are sitting there at number 28. Tim Doyle, you picked for the Warriors as they make that step into the future. They're moving into a new building in San Francisco. Got them taking Carson Edwards out of Purdue, who was great in the tournament.
Yeah, obviously he was outstanding against Virginia, where he made double-digit threes in that game. I don't know. Don't they just have a history of taking little guards and Steph Curry, and even Quinn Cook comes in the game now and like buries a bunch of threes? I think Carson Edwards is not going to be taken in the first round because he's undersized and all he can do is score. Man, is he a really good scorer, and wouldn't he be fun to watch in that environment out there in Golden State, going up and down, even learning behind Steph Curry for a year? Golden State's in an odd place right now, right? They thought they were going to have Durant, Klay Thompson. What's the identity of that squad going to be? They're still going to play fast. They're still going to be fun to watch. And those 2 adjectives describe Carson Edwards. Plays fast, a lot of fun to watch.
Gary, what do you think the impact that Carson Edwards could have on the NBA in his first season might be?
It's hard to say with guys like him. Let's be honest. From a probabilities perspective, he's unlikely to be an impactful player for a variety of reasons. But, I've ruled out players before and been wrong, and I'd be happy to be wrong about Carson Edwards. I don't think there's any doubt if you put him on the court, just let him go, he'll get buckets in the NBA, but what else can he do besides that? He's not really a point guard. He's a little scorer. He's a little shooter, and so I think it probably breaks one of 2 ways. We either look up in a year or 2 or 3 and we go, yep, he was just a little scorer, and little scorers don't really make it in the NBA outside of that guy named Allen Iverson and a few others. Or we look up and go, my God, he was super productive at Purdue, put on a show against Virginia in the NCAA tournament. What were we not paying attention to? He showed us what was possible. Shouldn't be surprised that he's doing this in the NBA. I guess you could describe almost any prospect that way, but I would lean more towards early second-round pick than first-round pick, but I'd be happy to be wrong about him. He's a spectacular and young, interesting prospect.
That is it. We just picked 1 through 30, the first round of tomorrow night's NBA draft, our mock draft special 3.0. Zion Williamson goes 1 to the Pelicans, who also take Darius Garland at number 4. No trades in this mock draft special. We, of course, do expect at least 1 trade tomorrow. There's always something that surprises us. Had 3 Kentucky players drafted here in the teens. And then rounding things out, the Golden State Warriors going with Carson Edwards. Our thanks to Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander, Reed Forgrave, and Tim Doyle helping us pick the first round of the mock draft here on HQ. I'm Chris Hassel. Coming up in just a moment, Evan Washburn will join me for more on the breaking news. Mike Conley traded to the Utah Jazz.